Hi everybody, welcome. Nice to see you. You know, I heard so much about this ashram from so many people and about how grand and glorious it was. And I must say it's exceeded my expectations. It's just astonishingly beautiful, filled with grandeur and enormous spiritual power. And I'm very, very delighted and happy to be here. As Swamiji said, I spent a lot of time in the ashrams of Swami Muktananda, and then I jumped ship and went over and hung out with the Tibetans for 12 years. But it wasn't all that different from each other because both are tantric non-dual traditions, the essence of which is the same. It's only the outer trappings that are different. Swamiji reminded me last night that we had first been together in 1969 in Bloomington. We had both attended a talk by Baba Ram Dass at the university in Bloomington. He was there and I was there, but we didn't meet. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And it was after that that Swami Shankarananda and I went off to India together. And after many, many years, I guess almost 40 years, I decided to take the leap and begin to teach independently. And Swamiji also was very helpful to me at that juncture because I was in Australia at the time at the Shiva ashram, and he sent me a ticket to the United States. And I ended up in Arcata, strangely enough, and began teaching on my own for the first time, rather late in life. And at the time, I really wanted to present the essence of what I had gained from all those years, 22 years, actually 24 years, if you count the time in Australia at another Hindu ashram, and then 12 years with the Tibetans. I wanted to present the essence without any of the cultural baggage. This was my aim. And I really wanted to just teach meditation in a very simple way, without any what I thought of as baggage. And it hasn't quite turned out like that, but that's how I began. And one of the things that I was very impressed with while spending time with the Tibetans was the path of the bodhisattva. You all know the word bodhisattva, don't you? The bodhisattva is the one who practices in order to be of benefit to all sentient beings. And even though Baba was a great bodhisattva, the path of compassion was not really explicitly taught per se. And the Buddhists have an exquisite description of this whole area of the path of compassion, and it was very moving to me. And I wanted to teach meditation in that context, with the idea that we meditate not just for ourselves to relieve our own suffering, but also because of the interconnection and interdependence between all beings, that the effect of our practice is for the sake of all beings. And I wanted to be able to teach a practice that would help people not only find a connection with their own deeper self, but be able to somehow integrate it into their ordinary life in the world. And that's a big order, but it was important to me. I thought right from the beginning that I would do a little Tonglen practice in my classes. And Tonglen is just the name for a Tibetan Buddhist compassion practice. It's also called breathing in the dark and breathing out the light. And I thought, we did this a lot, every day, really, at the Gompa, and I thought that this would be a lovely practice to teach people, because it's a way of integrating our own suffering, or the suffering of others, with compassion. And the traditional Tonglen practice involves working with others, breathing in the suffering of others. And so I just presented this right at the beginning, and everybody freaked out. They hadn't received the teachings on interdependence or any of the other Buddhist teachings about the purpose of a human life and the importance of compassion, etc., etc., etc. And the idea of breathing in the suffering of other people was understandably kind of freaky. And so I said, well, we don't have to do that. We'll just work with our own suffering. You can't have any objection to breathing in your own suffering because it's already in there. So that seemed to work. And, it really works out in the end to be the same because of the interdependence and interconnection between all beings. So we began working with the practice of breathing in our own suffering and breathing out the light, the resource that I called it. And this was going well until I asked people to share what the issues they had with it. And I was told that they couldn't find the light, or they couldn't keep a hold of the light, or they didn't have access to the light. And I thought, well, yeah, you need a little training in that. And that's the whole point anyway, is to be connected with our own expanded consciousness, our own higher nature, the light, so to speak. So I added a little meditation on the light to the practice, and that seemed to help a great deal. So the practice involved really the transforming of suffering into love or compassion. That word compassion it's a little hard to understand what that means. We might think of it ordinarily as something like empathy, but it really is more than that. It's love at the most expanded degree possible. So it's not love in an ordinary dualistic framework where you love somebody. In this form of love, which is called compassion or bodhicitta, there's just love. It doesn't have an object. It's all pervasive. It's the very nature of reality. It's the expansion of the heart center to its highest capacity. And it's not emotional. So does that make sense? That kind of love? Divine love, what you could call it. Not personal in any way. I was very struck by hearing something about this quality, which they call bodhicitta. And it's the quality that a bodhisattva has, and they call it compassion or love. And what I heard was that without this quality, without bodhicitta, enlightenment is impossible. That sooner or later, it has to be developed, whether or not it's developed from the beginning or not. And along with that, it was said that with bodhicitta, enlightenment is inevitable. I thought, well, that's for me. That sounded like a very good recommendation. So the compassion was a great idea. But suffering is another part of this equation that needs to be contemplated. The Buddha said that life is suffering. And most of the time, unless we're in the throes of some terrible physical illness or accident, or unless we've lost all our money, or we've lost something near and dear to us, we don't usually just go along all day long thinking that our life is suffering. Seems good enough. Seems normal and okay. But if you think about it deeply, there's so much of what we do that's just automatic, that's habitual. And there are so many ways in which the instant something arises within us that doesn't feel good, we have so many ways of keeping it at bay, of contracting, pushing it aside, changing the subject, projecting the problem onto somebody else, creating a whole case against somebody else, or dissipating the energy of that suffering in so many ways, like calling up a friend on the phone and talking about what a bad day you've had and what a terrible life you have, or what a terrible person somebody is. And we go shopping, we eat, we drink, we take drugs, whatever, all the millions of ways. Trying to understand, analyzing, reading, studying. There are so many ways that we deflect actually sitting with our own experience. I'm not saying that any of those things are bad to do. They're fine, but they can also cover up the experience of what we really are having in the moment. Does this make sense? The sort of suffering that's underneath the surface of ordinary life. And our ego activity is so habitual that the instant it arises, there's a tactic or technique that we use to push it away. And whatever it is that we have resistance to, we contract around it. And this kind of contracting is suffering. And it's really very normal for us to do. So in this practice of breathing in the suffering, instead of contracting around it, we open, we let it be. We give it space. We accept it. In my life, I noticed that if somebody accepts me and loves me and befriends me, then I'll do anything for them. I feel very open and happy and agreeable. But if somebody is critical or judgmental or negative, I contract and become resistant. And in the same way, our stuff is like that. If we are judgmental of our stuff, our negative habits, or our suffering, then it gets contracted and squashed down. And in order to give it the opportunity to be transformed into higher consciousness, what we really need to do is to befriend it, to accept it. And in this practice, we practice doing that. We breathe it in, the bad feeling, we let it be, and we have an attitude of friendliness toward it, acceptance, whatever it might be. And this is very radical and very different from the way most of us have lived our lives, where we're always trying to grab what's good and push away what's bad. That's the ego's agenda. And in this practice, we turn that agenda completely upside down and welcome the suffering, and then give out the light, our own blessing to it. So I added a little piece where we meditated on the light in order to give people an experience of being able to at least a little bit identify with that light. And it was very simple. It's imagine that the inside of your body is nothing but light. No organs, no blood, bones, guts, nerves, nothing but just light inside. And you imagine it. It's a visualization, which I guess a lot of you are used to. And it can be any kind of light, white light, It can be dazzling, or it can be a warm glow, kind of like sunlight. It can be blue light or rainbow light. Whatever comes up. You just imagine that you are a being of light. And we use our imagination. But it's not really something that we're making up, because we are beings of light. We do have a light body. It is our nature. It's not our nature that we usually identify with. We usually identify with our physical body or our energy body or our emotional body. But in this practice, we identify with this body of light. And the key in this practice is the identification. So we really kind of tell ourselves, this is what I am. I am this being of light. So that when you breathe in the suffering or the bad feeling, you don't jump over into it and identify with it as you had been doing. It's a very hard practice. It takes a lot of practice to get the hang of it. But when you do get the hang of it, it's enormously beneficial, because it changes your entire stance toward life. And instead of kind of fending off stuff, you can be open and welcoming. And it gives that stuff, that dark shadow material, whatever it might be, an opportunity to transform itself. Does this make sense? So even though it sounds pretty easy to breathe in the dark and breathe out the light, it really is profound, and it's quite difficult. So I do it in every one of my meditation classes for a little bit, just so people will get the hang of it. The term that I use for the dark that we're breathing in is bad feeling, because it seems kind of universal, and everybody knows what a bad feeling is. Everyone has had a bad feeling, and usually we find ways to keep it at bay. It can be the bad feeling of anger, simmering in your belly, or it can be sadness, a broken heart, or it can be fear, that's a bad feeling, or it can be depression, kind of shut down, or it can be confusion, where you just don't know what to do or what's happening. What's the bad feeling that's your bottom line bad feeling? Is there something that's kind of been a thread throughout your life? Maybe I left yours out. Can you think of any others that I didn't mention? Fear, anger, sadness, confusion, depression, resentment, jealousy, pride. Well, whatever it is, maybe you can sort of identify your most common bad feeling. Not that you have it all the time, but it's the one that comes up when you're having a bad feeling. And so what we do in this practice is feel that feeling. And this is not pleasant, so this is not always a fun practice, but it's work, and it's a very important work. So we feel that feeling, and instead of finding all the different ways we have of getting rid of it, we breathe it in and we let it be, and we give it space. And then on the out breath, we breathe out this beautiful, expansive light to it. I like the metaphor of light for this quality of compassion and higher consciousness, but spaciousness also works very well. You know, the inner space of the heart is vast and unlimited. We often think that the space inside our body is limited to the size of our body, but it's not true. The inner space is as vast as outer space. And so when you go inside and imagine yourself as a being of light, you can imagine yourself as vast, unlimited in size. Or you can use the metaphor, just imagine yourself as a being of love. if that works best for you. So there's some way that you identify with this resource, which is what's breathed out on the out breath. Another important part of the practice is that you're not fixing anything. You're not efforting. I mean, a lot of this is somewhat of an effort because it's so complicated, but you're not trying to make the bad feeling change. The light does all the work. All you have to do is to identify with the light. Sit as the light. So that when you breathe in the bad feeling, you don't jump over and identify with that. Does that make sense? So it's holding that identification. Would you like to try it for a few minutes? Just for a short while. We're going to do more of it on the weekend. So decide what bad feeling you might like to work with. Perhaps when I was talking about it, you might have picked something out. And then just set that aside. And then take a little time to imagine that the inside of your body is nothing but light. Spacious. And that non-dualistic love, which is the quality of the heart when it's fully expanded, has no object. And in some way, establish your identification with this resource. Just tell yourself in some way, this is what I really am. And then whenever you're ready, on an in-breath, breathe in the bad feeling, giving it space, letting it be. And on the out-breath, breathe out the light to that bad feeling and to all the contracted aspects of yourself. You don't have to breathe in the bad feeling with every in-breath. You can do this in a relaxed, leisurely way at your own rate. So let's just sit for a couple of minutes and practice breathing in the dark, breathing out the light. And then you can let go of the practice and just rest your mind in the light, just for a little bit. Just relax completely. This is just a tiny little taste. We're going to do more practice along these lines in the workshop on Saturday. But I just wanted you to get a little feeling for it. This is a practice that you can do anytime, any place. And for a very short period of time. Once you get the hang of it, and it becomes kind of familiar and natural to you, and that takes longer for some people and shorter for others, you can do it even as you're in the middle of a conversation with somebody. Let's say you're having a conversation and the other person says something that hurts your feelings, and you feel that little tendency to contract, defend yourself, shut down, or whatever, respond in some negative way. Instead, you can remember, breathe it in, let it be, give it space, and then breathe out light to the whole situation. Just do it for a few breaths as you're continuing to have a conversation. It becomes second nature. It's a great asset to have because it will actually transform the way that you operate and carry yourself. The other kind of or brand or form of meditation that I do in my classes is much simpler in a way, and in some ways more difficult, and that's just an awareness meditation where we just relax into our own essence, which is very easy if you can do it. But for some people, it's not that accessible. So it's important to have several things you can do. If you can't connect with and touch and relax into your own spirit or inner self or Buddha nature or whatever you want to call it, your essence, then you can work on what is standing in the way, which is the purpose of this Tonglen for our own suffering practice. But ordinarily, it's wonderful to just relax into our own being. And I see you're all doing it already. So it seems a bit superfluous, but I'll keep on talking anyway. So in this practice, we begin with a couple of full breaths, opening and softening on the in-breath, and relaxing and letting go of whatever you're holding on the out-breath. So as you breathe in, you imagine yourself softening, letting go of all the defenses and boundaries and barriers that ordinarily you hold to protect yourself. You could imagine that every cell in your body is opening like a flower in the morning sun. It's a very gentle kind of opening and softening on the in-breath. And then on the out-breath, just let go of whatever you're holding. And you're holding a lot of stuff unconsciously, so you don't go through and list and enumerate what you're holding, but just have that sense of letting go of all your agendas, your ambitions, your wounds, your problems, your persona. And the only other instruction is to very gently orient yourself toward what you really are. It's very subtle. It doesn't stand up and wave a flag saying, "Here I am." It's always looking out through your eyes, but it's very quiet. It doesn't have a voice. It doesn't even have language. It has no position, no agenda. It's just awareness. And when we hang out with this essence of our nature, our core, it's like just hanging out with our beloved, our own inner being. Nothing to do. Just letting everything be as it is and relaxing into this space of awareness. And we'll sit for 5 minutes. You can continue with the breathing if you like, or just fall into your own being effortlessly. It's been a great honor and a great joy to be with you this evening and to be with Bhagwan again after such a long time. And I thank you all for your attention, and I hope to see some of you on Saturday. Thank you very much. Namaste.